should have died there. Look at my health. Look at my health.
The non-medical like aura inside your person.
I believe the proper term is called woo-woo science. There's nothing wrong with that term. We're not dissing that term, but that's what it's called. That's a different. You gotta
Ames,
flip
you
the letters.
flip the vowels.
Okay, I should have died there. Look at my health. Look at my health.
The non-medical like aura inside your person.
I believe the proper term is called woo-woo science. There's nothing wrong with that term. We're not dissing that term, but that's what it's called. That's a different. You gotta
Ames,
flip
you
the letters.
flip the vowels.
Okay, I should have died there. Look at my health. Look at my health.
The non-medical like aura inside your person.
I believe the proper term is called woo-woo science. There's nothing wrong with that term. We're not dissing that term, but that's what it's called. That's a different. You gotta
Ames,
flip
you
the letters.
flip the vowels.
Okay, I should have died there. Look at my health. Look at my health.
The non-medical like aura inside your person.
I believe the proper term is called woo-woo science. There's nothing wrong with that term. We're not dissing that term, but that's what it's called. That's a different. You gotta
Ames,
flip
you
the letters.
flip the vowels. What is going on, everybody? Welcome. Happy Monday. How y'all doing? Welcome to the Lazy Tech Tony Show. We've got something quite different. Very, very different today. It is very different today because we're not playing a game. We're not talking about how to do all the things and how to have a positive attitude in a dreary world. No, that's going to be next week. Today, We're talking to somebody that's actually very, very special, someone that's very near and dear to my heart, someone, honestly, without their mentorship, without their direction, I would not be here. I would just be Tony. I definitely would not be Lazy Tech Tony. But before we get into that, I do want to say, Chakra World, what is going on? How you doing, my friend? Justaraya with the 6-month sub. Thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate that. But you know what? This is not just about me. This is about finding out other people's journey and understanding what makes them tick. So let me please introduce our guest for today's interview, Mr. Radford Castro. Rad, how you doing, my friend?
What's up, man?
What is going on? For those of you who don't know, Rad, the Radical Insider, founder of Tuple, founder of Lazy Tech Guys, is a good friend of mine. And before we get into that, Rad, I'm just going to quick fire some questions to you so everyone can get on the same level with you. Favorite soda?
Oh, I don't know if it's much of a soda. It's kombucha.
Kombucha, okay. Favorite ice cream
Carbonated?
flavor?
Strawberry, chocolate.
Favorite sports team?
Niners.
Niners. And
Yeah.
last but not least, favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Jerry Maguire.
Jerry
It's just-
Maguire.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boom.
What is it about Jerry Maguire? Is it the agent kind of mentality?
Yeah,
just
I
fucking
guess-
go get it and just get after
Yeah,
it.
it's like okay, yeah. It's the the coming of age story sort of thing. But
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So, Rad, before I had met you, you had a lot of you're a jack of all trades when it comes to ones and zeros. Amongst Matt, I don't know about that. Like, not only are you very versatile in the digital space, you're also very versatile in the physical space, and we'll get to that because some of your content as of late has been your carpentry work, which has been stunning, by the way. I've been very, very inspired, but also very put off because I'm like, oh, well, if Rad can do it, I'm not going to do it. So it is really awesome to see the things that you're doing for your kids, for your wife, for your house to make it that much better. But how did you start in the digital space? Did you go to school for that, or you were just like, I live in the Bay Area, I might as well get into this?
Oh, that's funny. So when you're saying digital space, are you talking about just like professional wise or hobby wise or like
Yeah,
I
I would say for the things that pertain to what you and I worked on, I
Oh.
guess would be the hobby aspect of it. How did you get started in that?
I think it's probably as far back as 2000. So getting into the internet, HTML was nothing. There was no backgrounds, right? That's kind of where I really started getting into the digital space. But to really, really get into it, like when you and I were working together, that was what, 2010, 2009, just right after the crash, right? So maybe a few years after the crash, and everyone was getting laid off left and right. And I still had my job, but I didn't know what was going to go on. And then we just started that thing. It was just sort of a hobby, right? So let's just put out a WordPress site and see what happens, sort of deal. But yeah, it was something that just became a passionate thing, and we realized that as we were going through it, we were having fun just covering the things. And it was at the time when tech was really changing, right? Because the internet was changing, smartphones was getting, becoming more prolific. We started to see more things. We had the what did you call it? The Solomo, the social network was starting to take off.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
things like that. It was just a lot of changes that were happening at that time.
You have background in coding. I remember one of the few things that you had under your belt when I had met you was actually an Android app. And albeit it was a very basic calculator, if I'm not mistaken. But to me, someone on the outside was like, oh my God, this is one of those devs that I've been hearing about. That's freaking cool. What inspired you to go with a WordPress tech blog? Because at that time, there was every single tech blog out there. Why? What did you just want to do it as a hobby, or was your thought process more along the lines of, I want to speak to a specific niche of people that don't normally go to Engadget or would never go to the CNET website. What was your what was the thought behind that for you?
Well, I think at that time there were still, even though there were tech blogs that were popping up, they were still very ugly. Engadget used to be a very rudimentary website as far back as like 2004, and even before that, you had what was the other one? It started with a G. I'm so bad.
Before The Verge?
Before Engadget. So it's the same guy that started the previous Gadget, blog, and before he went to Engadget, and then people left there and they started The Verge, or This Is My Next. And so we were thinking maybe we could ride that wave. We don't have to be exactly like these guys, but we could cover a specific thing. Like for us, it was like smartphones and mobile devices. It was, the apps that were within them, and the gaming industry was also part of that. It was streaming games at that time. So I just felt like, there's so much to cover, and there's not one big guy can cover it all. And even the big guys need the little guys to cover some of the stuff that they just don't cover, that they can't just cover everything. So tech was very, very huge. I don't know how it is completely now, because AI is now turning things upside down.
Seriously.
But, the way I saw it at that time was that it was really fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do we do this? And so it was a game of catch up, and I was like, well, what's the most common thing we could do right now? What's the easiest thing? Let's use a WordPress UI. And now we have other stuff like Ghost and all these other guys, these other, but for me, it was just like, hey, let's just get this thing off the ground and just cover something,
Did you do you feel like your experience with the website kind of help you find some other anchors that you could use in your professional life as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the big thing was I wanted to really cover all those pieces, but I wanted to know what it's like to be a media outlet. For real. So, and it's funny because, that's when I came across Victor, and then he tossed your name in there. And then I was like, wow, this guy, he is absolutely passionate about tech. What the hell is he doing in this company, right? He should be, that's the thought I was going through. I go, because when you were doing this coverage, I was like, where's this guy been before? Because it was so comprehensive, and you were treating it like a serious job.
Yeah.
And I was like, to me, it was like, this is a hobby thing, and we're gonna just bring this guy in because he's cool. And then it was the same thing. You had other guys that were had similar mindsets that you kind of brought into the foray, and I was like, this is cool. And it got to the peak where we were like, what is it, 2013 or 14, where we were in Vegas and there was like 50 of us in a hotel.
Oh, when we went to CES.
We went to CES.
Oh, yeah.
And we had every friend in there. We were covering so many things.
Yeah, and that's when I realized your brother and I went not only just to the same college, we were in the same fraternity. Like, you open the door and like, wait, why is Rich here?
A small world.
And it's like, that's my brother. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's your brother. I helped him pledge. Right. Like, that's crazy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're in this company? My brother was cracking up because he was just like, well, you got my boys over here, and they all had cameras.
Yeah.
We had so much coverage, so much video, and so much assets that we were just like, how the hell are we gonna write all this stuff?
I know. Yeah. And
we did.
We made it work. We figured it out. It was guerrilla production by any means, because like anybody that's watching, if you ever go to an event, you don't wait till the end of the week when you get home to put everything out. You got to do it when you get back to the hotel, or you do it right when you get off the floor if you have a powerful enough computer. Unfortunately, we didn't. We bought a very cheap Acer from Walmart like 4 hours beforehand, just as a means to like house all the data. But we used one MacBook, and that was it.
You know what? I really enjoyed our time when we were doing these things together, because it was a fun thing for us. We were covering things from the onset, right?
Yeah.
We were in the Bay Area. We were just trying to cover what we could cover. And we were just seeing things off the internet from a tweet or whatever. And like, let's cover this. This seems important, right? We're like basically each of our own editor-in-chiefs, right? And then when we went to our first convention, like the CES for the very first time, that's when we knew how serious it was, because we got there and everyone had their badges on, and we were one of the badges that had a step lower, right? We didn't have the media badge. We had the blogger badge, right? And it was just, I think, 4 or 5 of us but we were knocking out articles like constantly. We were knocking out video. We were just literally hundreds and hundreds of articles.
Yeah, our Alexa ranking for that week was astronomical. We had never gotten into the triple digits. We were always in the quadruple digits.
Yeah,
and
which was nuts.
It was insane. And then the year after that, it got better. But with all these are, you know, going to Vegas, going to E3, having a whole team, being able to dive into our passions, our hobbies, and whatnot. That's all well and good. But the thing is, I mentioned earlier, you have a family. I have a family. Victor has a family. How did you, and how do you now, how do you balance your work life when it comes to the things that you want to do? Because one thing I know about you is that if something piques your interest, you go try it out. You there's no question. I'm just gonna go try it out, and that's why you started the carpentry thing. You had and have Nearmint, a website where you'll be able to visually see like somebody's digital collection of all the games, all the Pokemon cards they have, and you have 3D renderings of it. I mean, that takes hours. How do you balance all that, but then also be able to go to your kids' games and you know, be a tentative husband and all that?
Yeah, I think attentive is the big piece, and I have to confess that I probably was not as attentive like I would like to be. But what I would try to do is involve my kids into the business, right? And sometimes it's never going to be perfect like that,
right?
And there's going to be a lot of businesses like that where you'll see, hey, you know, and you'll see that in a lot of restaurants, right? It just becomes part of the lifestyle. They'll work towards something and they'll get their kids involved, right? But then right now we're at the stage when we were doing Lazy Tech Guys, my son was like, what, 3 or 4?
3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, so he didn't really know what was going on, and my daughter was like 1, and then my wife was pregnant with our 3rd one. So it was crazy time, like, and then when did you have Estrella? So it was like
2012.
2012. So that was when things were really changing, because, you know, we were in 2010 through 2014, we were going through our company. We were at Twit at one point. Like we were going, like Twit took us in, and we were going even crazy. You know, we were going bonkers, and that's when people were really. I mean, the time that I thought they were really taking us seriously is when we got our first like hotel invite. You know, you're like, oh, you want us to go to your hotel room? Okay. And he was like, here's the new laptop.
Yes.
We're like, what?
Come check out Nero, a product that nobody uses anymore.
I know, right? All the what do you call it? The not motion capture. Well, I guess you could say that.
All the Xbox Connect kind of wannabes at the time. Sure.
At the time.
Yeah.
There's a million of those things.
No, I think it's very admirable for you to like admit, but also be aware that there was a segment in your life where it wasn't that good. The awesome thing is that you do involve your kids. I've watched you involve your kids when you're doing the carpentry videos. They're actually getting their hands dirty, so to speak. Yeah. They're learning a life skill. Again, something that I wish that I'm able to impart onto my kids. For me, a life skill that I can do is I can teach them how to, you know, how to cook something, because now I know how to cook something. But it's definitely cool when your kids do want to be a part of it. And I think the big thing for you and I was whenever we had to do a meeting, whether it was regarding Lazy Tech Guys or Lazy Tech TV or the podcast or any of that, it was always like, well, let me just make sure that my better half is like okay with it. Not that, you know, we just had to make sure, because, you know, there's always with a family, there's always multiple plates being juggled. And if you throw a plate in there without any kind of consideration, that screws up a lot of things unnecessarily.
Well, you know, Odyssey was like the anchor, right? Odyssey, my wife, she's the one that literally carried a lot of it, you know. And as you said, you know, a lot of the things that we went through before we make those decisions was sort of like, you know, this is a thing. And she's like, it's starting to become less of a hobby and something that's real. And I said, yeah, it's going to be one of those things that we're going to have to come to terms with and see if this is something we want to either push at it or, either that or go into another organization or move into another company. So, but the family always came first. Trying to get them to be a part of it is always going to be tough. But at the same time, I, in my mind, was thinking, but what's truly important? How do I get involved? How do I get them involved? And if I can't, I might have to do some sacrifices. So, and that's kind of where the woodworking came into play. So it's sort of like, well, maybe I could, since the kids needs these things, why can't I just turn it into something that I enjoy, and maybe someone out there, along with me, the millions of other like makers that are out there,
oh, totally,
can enjoy it. So that's kind of been the approach now. At this stage, because the kids are older, they kind of need they need everything from us, right? They need every moment that we can get, because those moments don't come back, right? So but I know business owners that are like, yeah, I missed my kid's graduation, I missed my kid's game. That's hard for me to live by, but there's some that just try to make it work. So it's a catch-22 sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And for those of you who can hear the lawnmower in the background, I apologize. I do want to say before we move on, what is going on, Melody? Great to see you. As well as Barton. How you doing, my friend? And the kid. What's going on? The kid says, I knew I should have studied computer science. Well, that's the thing. The business that Rad and I went into wasn't computer science. It was more like writing prose and understanding, an upside down triangle, understanding storytelling from a journalistic point of view. And writing was in school and continues to be one of my weakest subjects. I'm not a writer. Like when I write scripts for work, I have to feed it through not just one individual. I have to feed through at least 2 or 3 people in addition to like AI to take a look at it. Chai, thank you so much for the 14-month sub for a total of 18 months in a row. That's crazy. Thank you so much, Chai. Great to see you. But yeah, I throw my scripts through AI in addition to actual human beings because I just don't have that kind of that skill. But video, when we as a website, Lazy Tech Guys, started the YouTube channel, that's where things started changing for all of us. And we got into video, we got into video podcasting. So my question to you is, Rad, now you have your own channel that's separate from Lazy Tech TV. What are some of the things from your experience overarching Lazy Tech Guys TV and your woodworking channel? What are some of the most challenging and rewarding aspects of running the channel, would you say?
Honestly, it's just starting. So I think my thought is, well, if I'm gonna do this, I think the part is just getting past the point of like, this has to be perfect. This needs to be. So you either have the mindset of you're going to take 8 months to launch something, or you're going to launch today. I just decided to do the latter. So it was not going to be perfect. My thought was, I'm going to be doing other projects in the future. Let's just get something out. So, and choose a date and lock on that date. So like the first video I released was interesting. It was I'm just sitting by myself. YouTube's giving me a countdown on my first initial video, and I'm the only first one seeing it, right? And I'm like, wow, this is kind of neat. And, once you're done cutting up the video and you put it out there, it was not perfect, but, I was proud of what I put out there.
Yeah.
I put out I said I wanted to have nice motion graphics. So you might not have the production quality, but that's what I'm kind of aiming for. But I put it out there and I was like, oh, cool, I have 1 view. And then it turned into 1,000, then it turned into 5,000. And I was thinking I'm gonna get 100 views by the time this is all done. No, it hit like 40,000
views. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was
people are interested. And then, but again, I was just like, it was just something I just like to do. Something that I love to do now on top of my programming. So I think I just like building things. That's what I find out.
I think one of the big things that you mentioned will really help, and that is something you like to do. If you're watching right now and you're a a part-time creator, or you want to be a creator, and you're like, well, I want to do the things that all these people that I see on YouTube, on TikTok, I want to do what they do. I have no idea what to do. In my opinion, what's the thing that makes you smile? Whatever that is, it might not be that exact thing, but if you look at a painting and you're like, okay, well, paintings make me smile, but I'm not a painter. Well, are you good at interpreting? Because there are plenty of people that want to learn how to interpret a Van Gogh painting, like what that is, or a Picasso painting. And if you can speak to the everyman in such a way where you're not talking down to them, but you're actually educating them, I mean, that would be interesting for some people. So it might not be cut and dry. Like, well, I like woodworking, so I'm just going to start a woodworking thing. It might not be that cut and dry, but sometimes it might be. And then, Rad, that's awesome that you were able to really hone in on that. Before you started the woodworking channel, first off, can we do you mind if we shout it out what the name of the channel is?
Yeah, it's called Kicking Dust.
Kicking Dust. So is it just youtube.com/Kicking Dust?
It would be Rad is Kicking Dust, since someone already took it. But you could just even do a search on Kicking Dust and you'll see a result.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of subscribers, but
okay,
for the 2 videos I produced with that many subscribers, I'm pretty satisfied.
No, but that's the thing. Like, you and I have talked about this. Like, yes, when you talk to like people for sponsorships, or you talk to, subscriber numbers do matter, but in the meat of it, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. It's all about the quality. And I mean, and it's hard. It's so hard because we all live in a world of how many views did you get? And it really, at the end of the day, that should not matter, but it shouldn't matter.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's always going to be in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
So I think that's the challenge, right? So when you want to do something that's passionate, if you're passionate about something, then the views shouldn't matter, because you're completely right. So it's just, if you're passionate about something, you're hoping, and maybe hope is not the best word to say. It should just be, okay, you're passionate about something. If your goal is to just create like the best thing, whatever it is, whether it's woodworking, printing out, doing something through 3D printers, producing, I don't know, architecture, chips, creating some sort of invention, just go for it, right? Because in the end, ultimately, you have to be at peace at what you're doing, right? So if you feel like you're at peace and you're really happy with just the journey, someone will join along that journey. That's my thought. And I think that if I could make this journey something that's worth telling, so that's what I'm trying to do in my videos, is like, how do I make this? How do I turn this into a story that's worth listening to, that's entertaining, not to just my audience, right? To me, mostly to me, and to my kids, right? Like, would they find it entertaining? Like, I try the funniest thing is I had the smell test with my wife because I want her to see it before it goes out. So that's part of my tradition. It's like, can you just take a watch this? And I don't care if you give it a thumbs down. If you think it sucks, if you think it sucks, tell me what makes it suck. So, and then I just try to work on it that way, because to me, those are my family is probably the most important audience. And then on top of that, if extra views helps, having subscribers help. But at the end of the day, you're going to be doing your normal thing, right? Everyone's going to talk about, yay, I have 1,000 subscribers, I have 10,000 subscribers, but you alone as a creator have to be okay and happy with it, right? Because there's people that have 20,000 subscribers, 100,000 subscribers, but they're not happy.
They're not happy.
They're just like, why are you doing this then? Is it because you're trying to get the numbers? Is that the actual high, right?
I think the expectation is so high, and they've hit that expectation, but then they have to hold on and keep the expectation.
Yeah.
And it's, in my opinion, if you're not happy doing the thing that got you to the 20,000 subscribers, you're not going to be happy outside that. Like, it's a mental health concern, beyond just like your content being pedestrian or repetitive. Now, Barton asks a question for your woodworking show. Did any inspiration come from the Wainwright woodworking show?
Some of it did, yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
All right.
And I think a lot of the inspiration comes from somewhere. I think one of my biggest inspirations comes from another channel called I Like to Make Stuff. So I actually participate in his Patreon. So I'm one of his higher tier Patreons. So I ask him really personal questions. But what I find really interesting about what he does is that, because he never really wanted to, he wasn't expecting to see his channel blow up in the millions of subscribers. His thought was, I just like to make stuff.
Right.
And he was doing it for his kids, and I was like, that's kind of along the lines of what I want to do. And and I said, if my channel is going to be like that, then so be it. I'm just going to do different things. That's all.
Yeah.
But if I could write a story that's interesting, if I can make it interesting to myself, then that's what I'll do. So, but I have a slightly different angle, but again, I just have to be comfortable with, like, one of the things my brother says, he watched the video, right? He's never heard of my channel. I finally tell him about it like a few weeks ago, and he's like, this is it? And I was like, yeah. He goes, this is okay. And he goes, you're not as stupid, or you're not as crazy. That's the brother I know. You usually like take chances. You used to be off the cuff, like you do cartwheels in your videos. I'm like, what is this crap? And he's like, you need to be you, man. I'm like, this is not me. He goes, not the whole you. You just look way too professional.
Maybe you've matured.
Maybe. I said, I've changed.
You've got 3 kids now. You've got,
It's different because, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to this. A lot of people that start their own stuff, they have their own full-time jobs, right?
Yeah.
So when you're doing things, you have to consider those people who are watching it, right? So I work with these guys every day. I work at a credit union now. I used to work in Silicon Valley, but there are people that watch it, again, may or may not be sensitive to it. And I talk to executives all the time. So I have to be okay with when someone watches it, that's the image I'm portraying about myself, because it's unfair, but that's how it is, right? You watch a YouTube channel and it's like, oh, this must be the other side of Red.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know about
the dark side.
Lazy Tech Tony without the tech. Maybe it's just lazy Tony.
Right. No, like that is a concern, right? Like in a professional field, that is a concern. Like if your online presence is just a bunch of jokes and memes and you acting a fool, but then you go into a white collar, button down environment, like, oh, okay, what kind of guy did we hire?
Right.
But I don't know, like there's 2 sides to that though, right? Because like you could just say like, no, that's just a character that I play. I'm clearly I get my job done. I get my shit done. When I'm here, I don't act like that whatsoever. But even with that, people cast dispersions and then they come up with their own reasons, like, well, I don't know if I can trust you because you're saying this, but you might be thinking the same thing that your character thinks. Like, I'm like, I can't win here.
That's the thing. So I've made that conscious decision to go that way. There's some people that may not, right? They may choose to go the other direction and may defend the other side of it, and that's up to them. And to me, I guess I lean more towards my work than I do in my hobbies right now. If my hobby turned into work, then that would change, right?
Right.
I would not have a worry about it. And that's just kind of like the atmosphere right now, right? Because people are working their butt off, and what used to be a high tier job is now kind of like, oh wow, we're in the middle side now. We're kind of like everybody else. To kind of catch up with everybody else, we have to do this extra thing. So, but to me, I'm glad, I'm very thankful and fortunate that this extra thing is something I love to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm trying to imbue that with my kids. Not an easy thing to do since kids in consumption world, but that's just kind of where it is. But yeah, trying to have fun is kind of the big piece.
That's a huge
I learned a lot
piece.
from you from that. Yeah, I learned a lot from you, man, from that too, because seeing where you've come from to where you are now is insane. Because I remember, like, you would produce these videos and you're like, I was like, okay, these are okay. And then you would step up your motion graphics. You were stepping up your production value. You're getting your writing a lot tighter. I'm like, this is serious now.
A huge part of that was the extra PC tower that you had with the graphics card that I could actually run Adobe After Effects or Adobe Premiere on. Because before that, I was using Windows Movie Maker because that's all I had, and I didn't, we didn't have a lot of, fiscally speaking, and you had that extra license that we could use that for the business. And I was like, okay, well, if you're okay with it, we're just going to do that. And that's when it started to flourish. And then all those plugins that you and I were talking about, like, and I could actually use them, not just think about wanting to use them. So again,
right there.
my success wasn't started by my success wasn't like 100%. What am I trying to say? It wasn't started 100% by you, but you definitely like got the engine revving with it, because you got me on the right path of where it needed to go, whether it be with the right hardware, right words of encouragement. Like the greatest thing that you told me when I remembered this. I did a review of an iPad case, and you got back to me and you said, "This is, I hate to tell you this, Tony, but this is kind of boring. You're basically reading what's on the tag and you're not telling the consumer anything that is useful." Like, I was like, "What do you mean? Like, how easy is it to press the buttons on the side?" "I don't know. It's pretty easy." "We'll talk about that." And just that little thing, that little tiny thing is like, okay, I need to open up my understanding of not only how to review something, but how other people might want to know about the product, and stop thinking that people are all going to look at a product the same way that I look at a product. And that was a big realization. And most of, if not all of my reviews after that, I think of the conversation you and I had. I'm like, okay, what would Rad say? What am I missing? What am I going too much into? And so again, thank you for that, because it's definitely helped.
It actually reversed its way back to me. So like when you would do the same for me for some of the stuff I would review, and you say, "There's a lot of opinions here, Rad. I don't see anything factual about this product." And I'm like, yeah. So a lot of it was, I think you and I really fed off each other's energy, right? And I think that's what we got out of our team, because all of us had our own perspective of how to review a product, whether it was a game or a device. And I came from a background, I came from the mindset of, well, what does this thing have and what's truly important? And then your perspective was, well, how do I make this interesting? And that's what I was missing. And so it was good that we were all in a team together, call it fate, or whatever you want to call it. But it was just really interesting, because Victor had his own perspective. You had your own perspective, Sean, even Andrew, right? So all of us that were coming together to try to fill these holes, we were just in the same vision, like, we're just going to knock this out.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, what I was really proud about was the amount. It's not just maybe the amount played a part into it, but it was with 5 guys, we produced between each other 8,400 plus articles.
Yeah.
Insane.
We were real scrappy.
Like, we were knocking stuff out. And we were sitting down with people that normally people wouldn't sit down on, right?
Yeah.
We would have coverages against guys that would have like maybe 40 seats empty, and we were just 5 of us that were sitting in there, but it was our ticket in. Like, remember when we covered what was the name of the streaming service that Sony bought?
Akamai.
Not Akamai. Akamai is different. It's the one with gaming with Gaikai.
Gaikai. Yeah, the other Kai. Yeah.
The other Kai. So
not
when
the
we
band Kai.
Not the band Kai, but the general, what's his name?
God, we're so old. No one gets that.
I know. But the guy who founded Interplay, I don't know why his name's not coming to be at some point. Dave Perry. He was the that started that company, and I was just shocked. I go, how the hell are they streaming a first-person shooter in this year on a browser?
Yeah.
And I didn't need any damn hardware.
Let's be clear. This was not of the modern computers or the modern browsers or the modern servers. This was like back in 2011.
This is 10 years ago.
Yeah. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Galaxy far, far away, where none of this, we never thought that streaming a game was possible. And now I would argue streaming a game is not commonplace, but it's possible. It's more than possible. Like we do have it. There's Xbox, there's Nvidia and GeForce Now.
Right.
Sony has their own thing.
Yep.
There's also Blasteroid, which
Right.
just did a partnership with Microsoft. So there's a lot of different streaming platforms, which is phenomenal because not everybody can afford, a $3,000 tower machine or a $500-$600 console. So I think it's great.
Yeah, it's just amazing that a small company was doing it, right?
Yes.
And it was, I mean, at the time, that was more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I'd argue. And then it's just them and on live, right? And so when you're seeing it for the first time, you're like, how the hell is this happening? And I think you were the only one that was just like, where's the hardware? I'm like, and somewhere. And then when we met this guy, they were telling us like what they're trying to do. And then when we covered it, CNET picked up our article and then our server crashed, right? So it's like, I was like, what the heck?
What the heck happened there? That was when you called me and you're like, our site's down. Like, okay, well then just, I don't know, reboot it. Like, no, it's CNET's fault.
No.
What?
Yeah, it was crazy, right? Yeah, that was the time when it was like, well, what happened?
Yeah.
And that was when I think Perry emailed me. He goes, hey, I want to let you know that your embargo is you'll be the first to know that you will have that we're going to be selling to Sony for $400 million. I was like, what?
Yeah, that was insane.
What?
That was insane.
And we were just one of the 5 guys that knew this, right? Yeah. And when it happened, we were just like, it was a euphoric moment, right, for us.
It really was, because we were normally the news catchers, like we were news chasers. We were the ones where Engadget or The Verge or whatever the company before The Verge was, we're like, oh, Engadget just posted an article. Let's read their article and then we'll write our article, but then source Engadget. Like it wasn't the greatest, but it was what we could do. But then when Gaikai came along, that really like started the ball rolling. And it was crazy when you were like, hey, Samsung's on the phone. They want to talk to you about doing some reviews. Oh, and they also want to pay you and I to go to a Giants game. I'm like, what the hell?
Oh my God. That's so much junk.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, AT&T and all that stuff.
Yeah, we partnered with AT&T. Like it was
so fun.
It was as a young blogger and a young, I guess, entrepreneur at the time, it was a crazy, exciting time of my life. But some of the things that we were able to glean from that and learn from that was you don't burn your bridges. You talk about things very factually. And if you do have an opinion, you can say your opinion, but do it with some candor.
Yeah, color it with facts.
Yeah, exactly. Don't just throw fire out there because it will get put out.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another question regarding your experience with Lazy Tech Guys, because we did have a comment section with your YouTube channel, our podcasts. How do you deal with negative like criticism or negative feedback from an audience or even like competitors?
I just completely ignore them. So I think my mindset when I guess the second time when we came out with the YouTube channel, right? I guess my YouTube channel. When we went through Lazy Tech Guys, we had our share of comments including some negative ones, right? But my thought was, okay, I'm just not going to look at them. And because I think in the end, if I'm really passionate about something, last thing I need is to read some comment. Now, usually, and this is just anecdotal, but I would say maybe 90%, 95% of my audience that ever watches me are not going to see something bad, but there's always going to be that 5% that do, right?
Right.
And for those that do, I just try to ignore it as much as I can, or just not read the comments, because there's going to be stuff like that all the time. As soon as we put ourselves out there, I mean, it's pretty much, game on, right? So when you're out there, you're going to have to expect it. And my coworkers who don't have any social networks, no nothing or whatever, they always say, are you okay with being out there? And I go, that's just my decision. I just decided to go in that direction. They're more later and they're a little bit in their later ages, in their later stages of life. So just like, I just want to be at peace, and there's no problem with that. I am at peace when I'm hanging out with guys like you, where we're both like can completely relate with what's going on the internet, right? This is just like what we like to do. We like to entertain. We like to put out content. But at the end of the day, we're just happy.
Yeah.
We just like doing this stuff.
No, definitely.
And I think like for you and I, like when we started Lazy Tech Guys, the fact that we produced that much content and we were still producing even when we were starving, even when we were just like couldn't, we had such little sleep and we were still producing content, just showed the amount of passion that we had. Right? We were absolutely, like that word scrappy. It's like the perfect word because that's what we were. We were literally crawling and scratching for content, and then when we get our own original content, then we were really breaking ground, right?
Yeah.
Because then people were noticing, is like, wait, they're releasing news at the same time we are. How is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
That's when they know, right? They're like, oh, these guys are getting embargo news now. They're getting,
I mean, we
being invited to the party.
We started getting listed on Tech Meme for a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And like you said, like CNET sourced us. We also got sourced by Android Central at one point. Fandroid sourced us. So there was a lot of accolades going our way. Like so much so, you and I went to a Lenovo event in San Francisco, and Lazy Tech Guys was on our badge, and this random guy's like, "Oh, I've heard of you guys," and I was like, "Okay, I don't know."
That was such a validating thing, right?
I don't know if we've made it, but that was validating. Just this random guy was like, "Oh, I know you." I'm like, "No, Phil Nichols is right over there. He owns Android Central, Windows Central, BlackBerry, Crackberry. Like he's right there." And it's like, "No, but I like your stuff." I'm like, "Oh, thank you. Okay, cool."
I wanted to ask you this question for a while, and I'm surprised I haven't asked you about it yet. So when we started it and we went to CES for the first time, what was going through your mind when you saw the very badges of the same people that we were following? Like, like we would follow these EICs, right? These big time EICs, and
editor-in-chiefs, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're Nalini Patel, or you're so-and-so, right? And they're just like, nodding, but it's just sort of validating because we're in the same room as them now, literally, right?
Yeah. And it was one of those, like, it's, how they say don't ever like meet your heroes.
Yeah.
It was one of those things. This is really good that we got to meet them, because guess what? They're human. They're flawed. Right. They're dumb. Like when they're not talking about the tech, the other stuff they're talking about, they're just there. They're just talking about whatever it is that they want to talk about. They're not, they weren't all in about, let's make sure that our title is SEO approved, or let's make sure that we got these keywords in there, these tags. It wasn't about that. What it was about was, hey, where do you want to go to dinner? Because we're gonna go see the Blue Man Group later on tonight. And I'm listening to this. I'm like, oh, they're just regular guys. And it's kind of cool to know, like, yes, they have a whole team behind them that can do all the stuff that we have to do. But on the surface level of it all, like, or rather when you get down to the bottom of it, like, they're really just like us. And they just, they might get a little bit of a red carpet treatment and be able to see things maybe an hour before we get to see them. But that just means that we have to try harder, Yeah. And I think it was very, very cool to be able to, God, what was his name? Josh Topolsky? What's his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's his name.
It was very cool to shake his hand, to say, hey, thank you very much for all that you do for the tech press community and everything. And he was already on his way out, so he could give a fuck about the tech press community.
That's right.
But he was very cordial. And we had no idea that he was on the outs by this time, but he was very cordial about it all. And I tried not to do the, what kind of advice do you have for me kind of thing. But I kind of like tiptoed in, like, yeah, we're just, we're here at CES. This is our second CES, but we're just trying to get into like the backroom deals. And he basically said, well, you're here now. Keep on doing what you're doing. It's like, all right, we're on the right path. We're not the smartest guys in the bunch, but we're going somewhere. Let's keep on going. But then life happened, and you got a full-time position with Twit this week in tech. Victor, he also got a position with This Week in Tech. Sean had to focus on the music store, especially being that he had like an hour commute every day. He couldn't put all that effort into articles. So we pivoted. So
Mm-hmm.
my question to you is like when it comes to like pivoting, because you, like I said in the beginning of this interview, you like to try out different things, and like your brother has said, you just go all out with it. What for you is like the clinch? What is it for you where you're like, yes, we have to do this now, versus I'm gonna wait to see if I want to get into this?
It was just in regards to what happened with Lazy Tech Guys or Twit itself.
Uh, yeah, I'd say Twit itself.
So I think and I guess this will make it sort of official here. When the CEO of Twit said, like, you can retire here, that's when kind of things were changing. Because I had to decide, can Lazy Tech Guys turn into a career? And it probably could have. You know, we were working for pennies on the dollar when we were putting it together, right? Despite all the accolades and all that stuff, in the end, it's a business. And I had a family that was growing. Twit was an established technology outlet. And I thought, okay, maybe we can do this. But at the same time, I also thought if I go in this direction, it would be in good hands, right? So, obviously, referring to you. But at the same time, I was thinking, you know, because Vic was also like, you know, I want to be in this mix too, you know, and he's a huge loyal fan of Leo. So
Leo, yeah, Leo Laporte, of This Week in Tech.
Yeah, and he just thought, you know, can we make this work? And I know Vic's background. I wanted you to be in there. You know, there was just a million things that are happening at the same time, as well as my son is just starting to grow up. So, I just made that conscious decision. I was like telling myself, maybe I could do both. And that's what was going on. And in some cases it was, right? Because I was inviting everybody into the party.
Yeah.
So when we were creating shows in there, I was bringing you in there. You were in Android, all about Android, like almost every week. You were on other shows.
All about Android. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did
and
that.
And you were in like what is it called? Not Game of Thrones, but the other video gaming streaming show that we started. And then Andrew was invited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did the mobile corner. We did a couple episodes of the mobile corner. That was kind of fun. We got some of the other editors.
Have the archive. I can give it to you.
Oh, do you? Yeah, I would like to see it. Actually, I would love to see that archive.
Well directed. Vic was really good at directing it.
Yeah,
he was such a good TD. But it was those were really fun times. And I think at that time, you and I were very passionate about those topics.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you and I are still friends, and why we're still doing this thing, and why we're having this podcast now, is because we just our mindset has always been similar, right? And you know, as we kind of go up this pyramid, our friends kind of like stay at certain levels, and then we're just kind of going this way, and I'm like, this is just something we like to do. You know what I mean? We can't help it, and that's just kind of where things are. Like when I got I'll try to keep a short story here. When I left Twit, or I guess when Twit didn't work out for me, you know, I went to Silicon Valley and I worked at Apple at that time, and I was like, oh, nothing can get better. But then I just thought, wow, I'm actually in the technology business now. I can't say anything about it. I'm not even allowed to say anything. I'm not even allowed to take a picture of my badge. I'd get fired.
Right.
That's how crazy it was at Apple. Like
a lot of security.
Yeah, like there's 40 people that was hired. Literally, one of the guys, they took a picture with their badge like this. The next day, he was fired.
Oh man! Like I got hired. No, you didn't.
No, that's the rules. That's the rules. Yeah. And then you know, for a while, I was in that mix for over a year, and thought, well, I can't keep working till 1 a.m. or whatever. I need to slow things down. So then I found another job, and then
you had like a 3-hour commute. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
because
they allowed me to telecommute, but it was just It was just whether you're going to be at home or over there. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, so, and I think that's something, you know, being that you by that time you had 3 kids, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, so like you leaving at 5 a.m, but then coming back at like 7 p.m, you don't get to see your kids, you know. And
no, yeah, trust me. I was like, when I told my mom about it, she's like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. And I was like, I'm so proud. You know, and you know, you go through the whole honeymoon stage, right? You're working there. And then you meet the other guys in the bus stop. So there's this bus stop in Berkeley. where you meet, people from Facebook and Google, right? So you talk with them, you get chummy with them, but then as they're walking in the bus, I go, "Aren't you guys excited?" And I was like, they're just looking at me like this, and then I walk in the bus.
Yeah, they're like, no, this is
I'm like,
another day, another dollar.
Really?
Yeah.
And I guess I ended up understanding that later, because I had to tell myself, am I that big of a fan for Apple? So that didn't work out, and I just thought, well, let me see if I can slow things down. So I just found another job, worked at some place, and the people that were hiring me, they go, "You sure you want to work here?" And I said, "I just want to focus on my family."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Okay." Now, yeah. So
it's funny you should say that about the enthusiasm that you had going on to that bus filled with devs from Facebook, from Google, from eBay. Like these are some top paying companies that other people would kill to work at, and they're like the drudgery of it. Like I'm just not in it anymore. It's so interesting because in my position, I'm effectively in training and marketing, and I still have the love of it. But when I go to these conventions, like the one I just came back from, Orlando, and we're at the bar and we're surrounded by people from Lenovo, from Google, from Facebook, Sony, and we're all just like, cheersing drinks and everything like that. We're not all there as competitors. We're all there as marketers. And just to hear them be like, "Oh, I'm so tired of these things." I'm like, "Oh, I wish I could do this. Or I wish I could do that." I'm like, I'm not there yet. I thoroughly love what I do, but I'm a little concerned that, there will be a time where it's like, okay, when is this over? Yeah. And I think that's where, like, making a professional pivot, as scary as it is, you're a great example where it's a perfect reason to do that, because it's not all about the money. Family is so important, and if you're there for your family, that is priceless.
Yeah, I made that conscious decision. I mean, I think the thing that, and this will be the first time, I guess, anyone who will hear this outside of the family, is the thing that changed me about Apple was when I was sitting down and I had lunch with my coworkers, and my coworkers were some of the best coworkers in the world. I mean, they're really nice guys, and it's not, and my experience with the people at the bus stop, at Berkeley, is not going to be everyone's experience, right? But my thought was, wow, this is incredible. We get to be here. And then I guess when I was in month 3, this coworker I was with, she was complaining about her son having, they were just fighting over stuff, and it was clear she hadn't spent enough time with him, right?
Yeah.
And they were just fighting during lunchtime, and I'm like, oh, this can't be me. But this was one of the coworkers who I respect and adore so much, but she would work till 1 a.m. like it's nothing, and she's been there for 8 years, but that's her life. That's she chose. And the other thing that kind of changed me too was when I was there, I would tell my kids, I go, I can't leave. I got to finish this thing. Yeah. They would drive all the way to Cupertino, sit inside the Infinity campus, right? And we're having lunch there, and everyone's laptops are open, and we're just knocking out code, and it's 10 o'clock. You know what I mean? And so, yeah. And I'm like, is this how it's going to be?
Something's got to change.
Yeah. So Mrs. would be like, are you going to go to Owen's game? And I'm like, oh, I got to go to this thing, and I don't get out until 8. And she goes, this is nuts. You leave at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. to go drive to Berkeley, and then you get picked up in the bus stop. As soon as I get in the bus, work starts.
Yeah, because you can start work on the bus.
Yeah.
The Wi-Fi enabled buses, yeah.
You can start anytime. And like my coworker we would share the same room, and he was like, yeah, what do you call it? They want to get this API endpoints out. And I'm like, that's going to take weeks. And he goes, they want it tomorrow. I'm like, what?
Fuck.
Yeah. Tomorrow? So he would be up till 3 a.m. knocking out API endpoints. And I'm like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
Right?
Some of the Silicon Valley glamour, the sheen is coming off now, Rad.
It's just like,
this is the reality of.
It's truly the reality, what goes on, and it's not just Apple; it's a lot of Silicon Valley companies.
Sure.
So, but and mind you, I'm coming in there. I'm a contractor, so just to lay it out there. When I worked for them, along with a lot of my coworkers, but the thing is, you all wanted it to be permanent because there was a different side to it. So, but to get in there, it's just like a club too, and just like any other company.
Yeah,
you got to know your people, and so you're in.
That's how it is with us in Microsoft.
Yeah.
I'm contracted with Microsoft, and then there's the FTE, the full-time employee side. Yep. And honestly, from the things that I hear, I like my side. I'm gonna stay on my side. I'm happy with my side. I'm in a good spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you and I are very lucky because we have gained skill sets that allow us to move across this way, right?
Yeah.
And there's some people that work this way, and if that's gone, that's it.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
But you and I have gained all these skills, through working together, that it's sort of and our connections, just the mere connections between each other, is just a big piece, so but there are people, going back to what I was saying with those guys, the guys that were walking and just dragging their feet to work. It's tough.
Yeah.
So
now I want to ask you about, people that work this way vertically instead of getting a good blanket of different skill sets, working this way. One of the downsides that we are seeing right now in action is that people are scared that AI is going to take over that particular vertical, whatever that is. And the kid in the chat asks a great question, and then Melody follows up. So I'll just respond to both. The kid asks, is there an ethical way to manipulate AI in terms of views on YouTube? And Melody says, from what I know, if you use AI, whether it is ethical or not, to bolster views and engagement, it's not organic. So it will actually feed skewed data into the system and will push your content to the wrong audience in their algorithms. So it can honestly do more harm than good and end up taking longer to organically grow your channel. So one thing I've jumping off of that, what is your blanket 15-second elevator pitch, not pitch, but opinion of what we see AI these days with ChatGPT, with Bing Chat, with Snap AI? What is your opinion on that? And then also for people that might be fearful of their position being taken over by AI, what do you say to those people?
I'll start, I guess, with the first question, right? Where I guess what AI is doing now. So I work with some of it now, right? And experimenting with it now. I think the big piece that I'm taking away with it is that it's taking away some jobs, but it's also creating new ones. So one of the things that was brought up in that question that was really interesting is the ethical side of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so now the new jobs that are popping up that are more immediate are called these AI ethicists, right? So that's another type of job that's now starting to proliferate in the marketplace. And that happens mostly because an AI is not sure what is good or bad, right? That's just kind of what it is. And just like ChatGPT, it's a transformer, hence it's GPT, right? So it transforms things into something that are search result to something that is, feedable by English, right? So when you look at the method of how we do research, you and I, when we want to figure out something, if we want to find the top 10, best-selling video games, right? We have to find out the sales numbers of each of those games. We have to find out what platform they're on, right? And then we have to put them in order. So to do that, we had to do those search results and then compile them and then finally come up with something that makes sense. Right. Now GPT does those things because it's trained. So that's the other job that is being created as the AI trainer.
Right.
And that
an AI prompter.
And the prompter, yeah. So but the prompter and the trainer, they're kind of one and the same. But those are the kinds of jobs that are going to be the most they're going to start to proliferate in the next month or so if they haven't already.
I'm starting to see some companies, especially in marketing, that being a job wreck in a marketing company where they're like, hey, we need you to help us understand AI so we can better utilize it for our overall skill set. Mm-hmm. Now, my thank you very much for the lurk, R3. My question is, do you feel like AI will 100% take over jobs, like writing jobs, or is it more so going to be like a tool? Because like right now we're seeing a writer strike in LA, and before we move on, I don't really know all the ins and outs of the strike. I hope all parties get somewhat of the things that they want, and in the end the consumers get what they want as well too. I know that's easier said than done, but one of the big concerns is AI being the crux that the large companies are going to say, "Oh, we'll just use AI." I mean, BuzzFeed fired a huge amount of their staff because they said, "We'll just use ChatGPT to write our articles." Now BuzzFeed is filing for bankruptcy. So
that's very possible.
So like, is it possible that we'll just start seeing in like 10 years from now just AI generated like scripts, or is AI going to be the same kind of tool that I try to impart onto people and say, no, don't replace what you do, just use AI as a means to an end to help what you do?
Yeah, so it depends on the context, right? The one that you brought up with BuzzFeed is the perfect example of how AI could definitely do the things that BuzzFeed's doing. Right, but BuzzFeed is creating things like top 10 of something, top 100 of something, 50 things of something, right? Yeah. That's something that ChatGPT could do in a minute, right? So, and you could say, can you just pull me 50 random Twitter, feeds from this, and then I will pick them and then write a paragraph for each of these, and it'll do it. On the other side of it, if you're a coder, I don't think there's much to fear about it, because it doesn't know where to even begin in terms of what it needs to build. It doesn't know what language it needs to be on, and even if it does, you still need context. So that's the reason why you're seeing stuff like Microsoft come out with their Copilot programs, and we're starting to use that now. Like, I'm using it at home. Pretty soon, probably our division will probably start using it because we use Visual Studio.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm asking it things like, oh, can you join two tables, and with this kind of criteria, two different tables that have these different columns that have this data, it'll just do it, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, okay, well, now a junior programmer is kind of screwed, right? So now you have these guys that are going to have to learn to be at this
some
level
more
to get hired,
advanced,
rather than down here.
It can't just be a code, a script kiddie.
Right.
Right.
But now that becomes a separate job now. So instead of, you're hiring someone to do those things, you're probably going to get someone from Fiverr to generate that for you or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, I could do this and it'll be an AI, but I could get the job done in 10 minutes, whatever it is you want me to do. And it has its limits though, right? Because context is everything in AI. And there's a lot of things that people still don't know about it that keep them fearful of it. So education is kind of key right now. People still think it's the Terminator, and it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. It definitely does not work that way. I think it was Barton earlier. I'm trying to. No, never mind. Yeah, so like Melody, she says it's more pragmatic to use AI to help you produce content and SEO rather than bolster views and such. So like that's the same kind of methodology that I use, which is to say, like, I'm not going to lean on AI to do all the work for me. I'm not going to have an AI program do all the edits. Like I just hit a button and walk away. I'm still going to do the bulk of it. But what I will have AI is do a once over. And if AI is like, well, based off of these algorithms that, that kind of match up with the same kind of video that you're looking for when it comes to tone, when it comes to, expectation, when it comes to SEO, we recommend that you add this B-roll in, or we recommend that you have more talking head or whatever the case. I feel like that's the kind of part of AI where I'm totally fine utilizing it. I do have some thoughts of when it comes to in the future, because what we're seeing AI now is AI basically itself isn't generating anything brand new. It's just taking existing ideas, whether they're images or verse, and just respitting them out with maybe different words in there.
So,
but
some of them though are original because they would use 3D models to create whatever it is they do. So, for instance,
isn't that neural networking?
Some of it, but a lot of it too is if you said, I want you to create an African woman facing me at 3/4 angle with these shades in front of a Grand Canyon backdrop, it does it. And it mostly knows because everything is built on 3D, and then it does the cell shading and whatever style you want it to be. And even though it's not perfect, it changes fields drastically. I'll give you one anecdotal example. A friend of mine who is a graphic designer, he is absolutely fearful of it, and he's a pretty smart guy. He works in tech. He's in Silicon Valley. He works for Citrix.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, and you know what? My field is completely dead now. Like, and he's like, we were talking for a while. I'm like, I don't even know where to go for anymore because I'm the concept art guy, and they come to him to get the ideas. But now you just tell the GPT to, I want this kind of look, and I want it to be, cyberpunk looking, and it does it.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's really crazy that we're at that level now. And he just shakes it like, how do I go that? I mean, how can I compete against that? He's like, before the process was, okay, I have these sketches, and now you have the sketches, and they'll say, well, maybe not like this, maybe more like that. Yeah. Right? And then they would make another set, and it would be 2 weeks, and now it's taken care of in 2 minutes. So you can just say, well, maybe more like this, and now it's done. It's just like, I want her in facing me directly rather than 3/4 facing.
Sure.
And it just does it. And then you're like, how do you fight against that? And I'm like, I don't know, buddy. And he's just like, I don't know either.
And
that's tough.
And like my knee-jerk reaction is not to fight against it, is to say, okay, well, that's that. Give me the PSD file of that, because that is not perfect. I can still offer value. It might not be the whole thing, but I can offer value in such a way that a computer cannot. And that means your logo, like fixing the logo to make it a little bit cleaner, fixing the shading on the woman's face for in this particular example to make it more photorealistic or something like that. I still feel like individuals such as your friend, there are still going to be places for it. Just might not be the exact same thing that they signed up for. So I think while I don't want everyone to like fully just embrace the AI, I think being understanding of where AI is going and how to utilize it to your benefit instead of like fighting against it will not only just save time but also save face, because it's gonna be there. It's gonna be there, and there's no reason to put up a brick wall and just say, no, I'm never going to use it. Like, well, then fine, we're just going to move on to the next person who will use it, but then we're also going to pay them this amount of money because they're going to use it as well as utilize their own skill set.
Right. And that's kind of how I'm seeing it. I guess you would say I'm in a more fortunate position, mostly because I'm, with the way developers work, we work across this way, right? So whatever industries change, we just kind of move in that direction, right? So when it comes to these kinds of changes, right, they can be drastic. But I always try to advise those that are in their field and AI is affecting that field to try to broaden their vertical into other verticals, because it is tough, man. Like, I can't deny that it is changing jobs. Like, if you want an executive assistant, like before, like CEOs and executive assistants, right? You can say, hey, can you write me an email introducing this employee, right? Make it 5 paragraphs, make it lighthearted. Don't forget to talk about these 2 highlights about it. And it will take her 3 days, he or she 3 days, right? To write that for the CEO.
Right.
And the CEO is like, let me proofread it. Let me look at it. Okay, off it goes, and it gets sent to the whole company. Now, CEO doesn't have to do that. The CEO could just talk to ChatGPT and say, do it this way. This is the employee's name. Here's the profile from LinkedIn. Do your thing, and it does it, right? So that's what we're up against. but I would verge on saying not against, but try to see how we could utilize this, because you're absolutely right. This is something that's not going to go away. I see this changing the banking industry in a huge way.
Oh, I'm sure.
In a big way.
And
This
that's
is something
that's
yeah.
your current field.
Oh yeah, it's a
So-
huge field. So I mean, in our current days, if you want to transfer money, you're looking at something, you're trying to examine how much money was used or whatever, and you could say, yeah, transfer this. But now you could talk to a chatbot, whether through your phone, whether through a phone or through chat, and say, I'm thinking about splitting my money out into these 3 different accounts. It can do that. And it'll say, hey, I just sent you a text for 6 digits. Can you confirm your 6 digits? And we can confirm the transfer. And no one says anything, right? No one,
Yeah.
the AI completely handled all of that, right?
Right.
That's how crazy this is. So you could be talking to someone who you thought was a human, but it isn't anymore. It's just a GPT. So
Well, we've already seen some customer service chatbot in the wild. I believe it was a scientific test, but a researcher contacted customer service over chat for Xfinity, for Comcast, and the researcher, they just used ChatGPT to talk to Xfinity, and at the end of the conversation was able to save like $10 off their quote unquote monthly bill. So it's pretty crazy right now. And like I said before, I'm not saying that we should just embrace it, but we should definitely be aware of where AI will affect our lives, whether it's in the professional sense or just on a regular day-to-day sense, and how we could actually make it like worth our while. Like Gary V, I'm sure you're familiar with him, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Right.
He has a great example of AI. So we have kids, you have kids. When your kids friends want to come over and they want to have a pizza party or something, there's bound to be one kid in there that might have some sort of, allergy to food, or maybe, something that is just not your normal thing that you know how to deal with. Now you can say, hey, ChatGPT, I've got a 13-year-old son. His friends are going to come over. There's 5 of them. They are going to sleep over. I've got about $150. I want to have healthy food, but I also want to make sure one of it does not include nuts. I want to also have a gluten-free option. You could definitely go and do a Google search and do all that kind of stuff. But the fact that you can just input that into a conversation the same way that you would talk to somebody and then spits it back out, it might not be 100% like right on point. You might have to do some additional follow-ups. And that's where, in my opinion, that's where the magic is in the follow-up to ChatGPT's like response. But that will save so much time and effort, whereas before we were having to scour different websites, and in many of the cases, especially if you're using something like Bing Chat actually gives you sources of where it's getting the information. Yeah. So ChatGPT doesn't, like, not off the bat, but Bing Chat will. So if you're like, I don't think Bing Chat knows what the hell it's talking about, you can click on the source, like, oh, okay, this is from the FDA. I'm gonna go with the FDA. So,
and it's free.
Yeah.
So I mean, like free. And it's giving you different levels, right? So you have like the creative, not so creative, and then tries to be accurate levels, right? You're selecting those different types, and then once you're using it, I mean, it's really hard for me. I haven't gone back to Google in a while, only because the way I look for information is just different now. So if I want to find an answer, it's usually, just even a year ago, you're searching for things, you see the results, you're culminating this package of pages that you're trying to do research on, but now you find out, oh, this is what LeBron James, all of his companies are comprised of, and how much the whole net worth is, right? That would take, a day to do. Now it takes minutes.
Right.
So these little things, right now, it's about time saving, right? And
sure.
I think the bigger thing right now is, like you said, the validation, which is great to see Bing do that, which is really great. Misinformation, obviously, is one of the things that is kind of a little scary, thanks to the proliferation of like stuff like deep fakes and voiceovers. Like we're seeing like new songs that sound like they're from Jay-Z, but there aren't. You know what I mean? I'm like,
right.
How is this possible? But they're able to do that. So,
I actually shared one of the Jay-Z songs with a friend of mine who's a huge Jay-Z fan. And I was like, hey, so what do you think? And he was like, is this like an unreleased, like really bad track from Jay-Z? I'm like, no, it's AI. I'm like, okay, that makes me feel better because this does not sounds like Jay-Z, but this is not his flow. Like he would not be talking about this kind of stuff. So I thought it was very, very interesting how someone who knows the artist like in and out can still pick it out. Like it sounds disingenuous. Like it sounds like something something doesn't sound right.
But that's a person that knows Jay-Z. Just imagine the person that's a casual listener.
Right.
That's the part that makes it hard. So I think about that
myself.
with my kids.
Yeah, myself. When I first heard it, I was like, "Oh, this is a pretty good track." What do you mean it's a robot? What? Like I could not pick that out. Now I can pick it out, but now, yeah,
which is nuts.
I mean, this whole interview, if I'm being brutally honest, was based off of Bing Chat. Here's what I asked Bing Chat. I asked,
what you're watching is all generative AI right now.
I am AI. No, I said to Bing Chat, hi there, because you want to be nice to the robot. I said, hi there. I'll be interviewing my boss for a Twitch stream this coming Sunday. He helped me get into the online space by providing funding, moral support for a tech news and tech review website, a podcast, and a YouTube channel. I want to come up with 10 questions for him that would focus on his technical background as well as his personal goals for family and life. And it gave me the 10 questions that I sent you.
I'm very impressed, man.
Right?
I was like, what?
These are not quite like, honestly, some of those questions I would have thought of myself, but then like some of the other questions that like what are some skills / qualities that you look for when hiring new team members? Like, oh, that's actually a great question because you had a team, and as your business, as your YouTube channel grows for your carpentry, there might be a time when you're like, I want to keep on doing this, but I don't want to edit. I don't have time to edit. How would you go about finding those people? And so I thought that this is a great example of not only of some great interview questions, but also like, Bing Chat isn't the number one stunner. It's not the answer be all, for everything.
But it sure did help. Like
a good start. Yeah, it's a pretty good start.
I was like,
it also said good luck in your interview. So thank you, Bing Chat. Appreciate it.
It's quite impressive, man. I think when it does those sort of things, like they described it as the answer engine, right? So that's kind of how I treat it now. Like I need an answer. If I want to search for things, I'm going to go on Google. But it's sort of minimized when you're just trying to find the answer. So I think that's kind of where things are. I do like the fact that it's actually validating the answers with sources. But it's just crazy the stuff that you could type up. I just what else are they training this damn thing on? Because that's what goes through my mind when I use these chatbots. I'm like, this is nuts.
So, I one of my other bosses for Mosaic and Microsoft, his father is not the most technologically savvy person, but he was in the market for a new tool because he himself does woodworking. So he was in the market for a new tool. So he actually asked ChatGPT to kind of compare these 3 different tools from these 3 different companies, like the pros and cons. And ChatGPT gave a really good comprehensive, side-by-side comparison of all these tools. And yes, you can go to a website like Lowe's and do the comparison check mark and everything. But ChatGPT gave additional anecdotal as well as factual evidence as to why this one is better than the other, kind of information that you wouldn't normally find on a comparison website, but you could only find from people that have actually reviewed and tried it out. And I was like, okay, well that takes away a lot of the guesswork. Depending on what you're looking for, it can definitely take away a lot of the guesswork. So it's quite exciting to be in the AI space that we're in right now. Whether you want to use it or not, there's bound to be something that is utilizing AI And but I still
Never
feel
know.
you never know, but I still feel the human touch, the human sense is still going to be needed. Like we still want to have that connection because
I think so too.
there are some
Yeah.
things where you're like, oh, this was, you know, when you if you ever see a movie, if you see a movie 10 years down the line, this was completely created by AI. Like I kind of don't want to watch it. Like it's great, it's cool, it's like good for you, but I kind of want to watch a movie where the writers were all in a circle and they were all yelling at each other because one guy wanted the plot to go this way and the other guy wanted the plot to go that way. I want to know about that kind of plot line. I want to know about that instead of just some guy just punching in numbers and it working or not working. So we'll see.
The interesting thing is though is that AI is still being trained, right? So
Yeah.
if an AI was the director of a movie, right? Like right now, if you just give it and it's not trained, it would be like, oh, he's dead. Wait, he's alive and he's dead again.
Yeah.
And then he's alive and he's dead again.
Yeah.
And there would be no cohesion whatsoever. But my thought is, I think over time, as the AIs get trained for specific industries, I think that's kind of like the key. Is we're gonna see less tedious jobs, right? And they're gonna be more creative ones. That's what I see
I
happening.
think that's the biggest thing is that some people, and I hate to say this is obviously very anecdotal and opinionated, but the tedious
Just say it.
jobs.
I know the boomers.
Yeah, but I just feel like people that are in the tedious jobs, like they're happy being there.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, because like the expectation is like it is whatever the expectation is. And now that an AI can do that, they're like, okay, well now you can go get creative and do something else. Like I didn't really want to be creative. I'm not creative.
No, I love BuzzFeed articles. I love to keep doing this.
Right.
You know, I want to keep creating the top 100 of something, man.
Yeah, and
the top 20 makeups, whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's just
and I think that for some people, like for them to for you to have like that wake up call to say you need to start thinking about other, not just other avenues, but other verticals. That's just that scary thought is enough for them to say, oh, well, then this is the reason why AI sucks. Because AI is taking my job. It's like, well, that might be true, but if you go back, you actually didn't have a job because that technology that you're using didn't exist. You kind of took the job over from something else, whatever that might have been. Printing press, you're now an online blogger or you're now an online content creator. Before, it was just some guy in a town square yelling at people and hoping to get followers. Now you have a camera, you have this platform, but now that AI is taking that over, you need to move on. You need to go, like, stop arguing, go move on, figure out where the next thing is for you. And it might not be a multi-million-dollar thing, but it might be another passion that you never even considered. And you know, I think you just need to be open to it. What's going on, Ramen? Ramen, great to see you. We made you on Saturday, by the way. We made ramen on Saturday. And Angry, great to see you, my friend. Angry Corgi, founder of the Angry Corgi Network, the sports podcast every Sunday. Go check out his stuff.
nice.
Yeah, they were talking about F1 and how Imola is all closed down, and I got very sad.
Oh,
Yeah, there was no F1 race this weekend, but they're doing, I think it's Monaco this next weekend.
Pictures of parrots.
is that Breath of the Wild or is that?
I think it was the
Tears
new
of
game. It might have
Tears
been
of
the
the
new
Kingdom?
game. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. Angry,
Nuts.
which game was that? Let us know. All right. Well, then the last question that I have for you from this list given to us thanks to Bing Chat is you know, you've had a lot of highs and you've had a lot of lows in your hobby businesses and your, you know, and whatnot, and some of the passions that you've pursued. What is one piece of advice that you can give to someone who wants to start their own online business or online platform?
It has to be something you absolutely love to the point where the numbers just don't matter, and something that you know you could share if you have family with them and that they're interested. I think that's the key is, and then starting, just having the nerve to start. It's really kind of in the breakaway model, right? Because when some people want to start something, there's people that plan and plan and plan and plan. But just getting started and getting to the point where the passion just, you know, washes away all of the things that you're worried about. Because there's always that fear of failure. Just trying to get past that fear.
Yeah.
And if you could just get started, I think it doesn't really matter. In the end, if your passion really is at a certain level, I think it just doesn't matter. I like seeing you where you were before and still doing what you're doing now is kind of evidence of that, right? And now you've built up this audience. And so, part of me misses that, and I guess I'm one of those that are still trying to explore where I kind of belong in this online world. But it's something I'm passionate about. I'm not completely sure if this is something that I would could turn into a full-time job, and that's not what I'm looking to. I just know I'd like to do program. I like to build stuff, so whether it's a program or woodworking or anything like that, that's kind of where I stand with stuff. I think ultimately I just have a growth mindset. So I think you and I, we're just always similar. And I think others that are in the fixed mindset where they're just like, oh no, this is ending for me. There's just lots of opportunity out there, and I think it's worth exploring if you're willing to put yourself out there. So
I think that's kind of the key for a lot of things, is that there's just so much opportunity. But if you're only stuck like, oh, I have to do prank videos, or I have to have an Etsy shop because I have all these machines, and so I have to make it worth its while because I bought all these machines, so I have to 3D print all these things. Like if you're not enjoying the process of doing that, then we'll know, and no one will want to buy from you. If it becomes like a hardship, then stop doing it. If you like, it's kind of the old joke, right? Like hey, it hurts when I raise my arm. Don't raise your arm. Stop it.
Right.
Go figure out something that will, if you still need to do something, use your other arm if that doesn't hurt, and then figure out how you can get to the next step. If it's not the same path, figure out what the other path might be. Just go read a book. Or go watch other YouTube videos of people doing things you never thought you would ever want to do or pursue, and see if you find interest in it.
Right. I mean, just to give you, when people are out there, just when you're watching videos or watching somebody and they have 1 million subscribers or even 100,000, and they're building something that looks incredible, or they're doing something that's incredible, you're never gonna you won't know until you actually go through the preparation that does it, right? So like when you're doing something as cutting a piece of wood, you're getting the camera, you're positioning it, you're focusing on it, right? You're getting the lighting down, then you can cut it. You know what I mean? And if there's some people that just want to do that and not want to film it, that's up to you, you know. And there's some people that are like that, like, I love woodworking, but I hate doing a video. And there's some people that are just really talented woodworkers or talented makers, but they just hate doing the video part.
Yep.
And that's hard. You know what I mean? Because to find someone to do that, you're gonna either have to pay that somebody, or you're gonna wait another 2 more years for the AI to work, and maybe that won't work either.
Right. I mean,
right? So it's just it's just one of those things.
That is the thing. Like if you want to do woodworking and you want to be a maker, you can totally do that. But unfortunately, the online world we live in now, we have to see a process. Like you have to show your process on TikTok, or you have to show your products on Instagram. And if you hate doing those things, then unfortunately, unless by some happenstance someone orders 50,000 of the one thing that you sell, that's just not going to happen. And so if you don't want to take those steps to be your own online marketer, maybe do the woodworking not as a means to an end, but do it as a thing because you enjoy the passion aspect of it. But if you're trying to make money off of it, that might not be the way to make money off of it.
Thing. Yep.
Yeah. So when it comes to hobbies though, what kind of hobbies do you have where you're like, I don't need to film this, and you just go do that? Because that's my problem. My problem is I don't really have any extracurricular things where I'm like, yeah, I should film that. I always like, I'm gonna go do that. Oh well, I might as well film it while I do it. Like I'm trying to not do that now.
I'm a crazy person, so like I feel like I have to film every damn thing. So like
okay, so maybe you're not the right person to talk to.
No,
let's talk to other people.
Yesterday I was like, oh, I'm going to whack the weeds in my backyard. I'm gonna film a time lapse of this. And that's what I did. And so like one day I'm gonna make something out of this backyard, even though it's full of weeds. And that's just what I did. I was like, I don't know if this will be entertaining later, but I have it. That's literally how I look at things now. And my wife's like, you're gonna film you just changing the lock? I go, don't know if I'll need it, but I just felt like doing that. So that's just kind of every single thing I do now. Like even when I'm doing working, I'm like, let's try this angle and let's try this angle and let's try this angle. And I'm okay with that because I'm just thinking this will probably look cool in the video. And I think I enjoy that process. So when I go in there and I'm cutting out the video and I'm like, okay, cool. It's down to 20 minutes now. Now time for the motion graphics. So like, here we go with the motion graphics. And I'm like,
it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that process. I don't know what it is. I think it's sort of like think of it as like a video canvas, right? And I'm just kind of making it and then I just share it. I'm going, this sounds kind of cool.
It's kind of like baking a cake, right? Because like when you bake a cake, you got the batter, you make the cake, then you put the cakes on, and you tear it up, and then you got the base, and that's your video, that's your base video, and then all the other like things like the toppings and the icing and all the other flourishes on there, that's all the motion graphics. You don't need that. At the end of the day, like the main thing of the cake is the cake, the eating the cake part. And the cake probably tastes very good. Your main video probably is very good. But the thing that we as consumers, as people, as viewers, we want to be attracted to it. So you have to put the fondant or the nice icing or the little.
So you and I have
flourishes.
the same mindset because in my eyes, if I want to watch the video, I need to feel proud of it, right? So when I'm watching it, I'm like, well, you know what? This needs some music. It needs to be synced with it. And I'm like doing it. So I'm like, hitting the space bar in every beat. And then I'm letting letting Adobe Premiere manage some of it.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of work to get each of those cuts to the beat, right? So, but I'd like to doing it. So I know how tedious it is. I wish there was an AI to help fix with that, but
I think there is. I'm not even kidding. I think that I just came across an AI plugin that will work with music for Adobe. I'll see if I can find it.
I've heard of it. I just need to see how accurate it is because then I'll save myself.
Sure.
Dozens of hours.
Yeah.
So. No,
I think that's that aspect of wanting to film everything. It is a pro and con, right? Because if you're filming everything. Then it gets to be.
The show's not going to be done.
Well, there's that, right? There's like if you're in the process of filming everything and you have to go edit it, then you're missing out on the other thing that your kids are doing over there, and you're like, oh, can you do it again? I missed it because I was filming me whacking the weeds in the garden. Like, so there's that aspect, but then there's the other aspect of it, like, well, because I was able to film this outside, I learned how to properly set up the tripod, and I learned how to properly do a time lapse. I learned how to do color correction in Adobe, going from daylight, midday to like late afternoon. I learned all of that, and now I know it because I did this one dumb video, and it took me 2 hours to do. So at the end of the day, was the total 4 hours of doing all that worth it? I don't know. I don't know if you can actually put a dollar amount to it, but I feel like as a family man, like you have to always have that open conversation with your wife, with your kids, and as the creator, you also have to be able to say, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go pay attention to you guys. I'm not done with this, but I have to be okay with that. I have to be okay that I'm not done with this, and I won't. After my wife goes to bed, I will not come back down here and finish it. I will get sleep.
Yes.
I will stay up there. That's one of the hardest things for me.
I am guilty for that. And it's a work in progress, I'd say.
Yeah, for me too. I'm far from perfect when it comes to that.
And I think that's probably what you and I are going through right now. We're each other's therapists sometimes, but I think ultimately in the end, I'm hoping the family benefits somehow. And I guess from my own personal perspective, they see daddy doing this thing and they're thinking, wow, that's a lot. You know what I mean? Maybe I can do that too. I mean, daddy tries to make it look like it's kind of easy, so maybe I could do it. That's the hope I'm trying to get out of it.
Yeah, you're creating that work ethic.
Exactly.
You're showing your kids like, hey, when I start on a project, I finish that project. Yeah. But the downside is, you know, as your kids are getting older, especially Owen, it's like he started the project, so he's not going to give me any time of day until when he's done. And that's like one of the hardest things to hear. And it's one of the hardest things to like have that realization. So to be able to back away and say, okay, this is not going anywhere. And really, if we're being honest, the only person that set this deadline was me. So I can fire myself for a few hours and then rehire myself and then get it done here.
You can also move the deadline date, right? So there's things like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
we don't have any newsworthy things that we have to put out right away, Rad. We're okay. We're not going to CES anytime soon.
I completely agree with you. My fault on top of what you're talking about also includes, and some of the people that are watching this that do project management will know this, called scope creep. And that's when you put too much crap on your like you started, you know, you're talking about making the cake, right?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is it. This is the cake. Wait, what the hell? What the hell are donuts going on top of this? What the hell? Why are the loaves of bread around it?
Yeah.
Why is it on the truck? Like, no one cares about the truck. We just care about the cake, right? Like, why is there strawberries on top of it all of a sudden? Like, no one cares, right? So, but you're absolutely right. Getting the cake done is the piece of it. And as long as we commit to it, and we're still pushing towards finishing a product, whether the deadline is close by or a few weeks away, we're still plugging away at it, right?
Yeah.
And I've been seeing you plug away at this thing for a while now, dude. That's why I'm very impressed.
Oh,
like,
thank you.
Just even visiting your channel, I was like, oh, this thing is serious.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And it just changes your impression, right? Because you're when I go to other people's podcasts, it's just like, oh, okay, we're gonna do this Discord thing. But no, when I see a full production value set up, you know, you have me propped up, you're getting me ready to go. We're doing a tech run, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna put my best foot forward. It makes a difference.
I mean, working at Twit helped a lot of that. Like being able to understand like what a TD, a technical director, has to do ahead of time, and getting everybody in the same mindset, knowing what to expect, you know, having all the questions ready and all that kind of stuff. All that experience would not have happened without you. So that's why I always come back to like you definitely.
I just stole that, man. I'm just showing this. Here's this.
We all stole something, right? We all stole some sort of skill set from somebody. So I stole like your suggestions and your ideations, and I used it for myself. But I mean,
just borrowed from someone else, man.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like AI. There's no original ideas anymore. I mean, even this setup of how our windows are, how the chat is like just vertically or horizontally up there. That's not all my code. I borrowed that code. Thank you, whoever made the code, Mr. Boost. I know it was you. Thank you, Mr. Boost, for the code. What's going on, Huckled? Before we move on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Huckled Gaming is in the house. Tell him hello. Okay, that is all.
Gaming?
Melody said, Melody, she's actually a musician, and don't say hello to yourself, Huckle. No one likes that. She says, I love to play music and I love to produce, so I record all the time. But when it comes to actually filming, I never get. I just never seem to get around to actually doing it. I haven't filmed anything involved with my music in a really, really long time. And it sucks because I have several pieces of content that are ready to be pushed out onto YouTube or wherever. I just haven't filmed anything. Yeah. And I mean, what would you say to that, Rad? Like, what would it just be like, just jump into it, or
just use your smartphone, start with something and see how you feel watching yourself do it. And then maybe that would be the spark, because that's kind of what it started with me. And every person is different, but when I first started doing it, literally the first video that you saw doing all that woodworking, that was all on my iPhone.
Yeah.
You know, it was completely all on my iPhone. There was like, my lighting was terrible, everything was, but I just thought maybe there's a way I could cut it to make it not look as bad. Right. So, but when I first started, it was just me yelling at my kids, hey, put this over here, make sure you put that over there. And then that video was enough, like, maybe I should do this one. So maybe it's just a matter, again, just starting and putting set up a small tripod, or I don't know, put it on a chair, just see what it looks like. Yeah. See what it looks like when you're filming, and then go from there. I
mean, nobody's first video or second video, even 10th video is any good. I mean, a couple of streams back, I watched some of my first like Lazy Tech Guy review videos that I had done, and I was basically, let's say this is the phone. I was reviewing the phone with another phone and shaking because I didn't have a tripod, so I was shaking. It was so bad, and somehow got 90,000 views because it was a HTC Thunderbolt, rooted HTC Thunderbolt. And I was like, okay, well, it was terrible, but something was right. So yeah, let's see what was there. Let's see what happened there. But yeah, I think, like, for all the creative people that are in the audience right now, I think one of the big things is when it comes to like wanting to emulate your favorite creator, you don't have to be them. You don't, the expectation shouldn't be meet them at their level. Go at whatever your level is, because we all started from the ground up. And you might be on the ground level for a while, but I think the consistency of it will definitely help you get into that mental rhythm of, okay, yeah, well, I did that one video that 1 month. I'll do another video this month, and I'll do it again. Oh, I'm getting faster. Maybe I'll do 2 videos. Oh, I'm actually getting like ad revenue because of affiliate dollars from Amazon affiliate links. Okay, maybe I can invest in a better lighting situation or whatever. And but thinking that you have to have all of the great cameras or microphones like right out of the gate, like, that is definitely not the case whatsoever. I don't know about Huckled, but I definitely started my streaming career streaming directly from the Xbox to Mixer. There was no camera.
Oh, I remember that.
I didn't have a mic, and so
you're just like, you're a floating icon.
I was just playing Call of Duty, and like people were like chatting to me, and I had to like pick up my phone and chat back to them on the phone. I wouldn't say it worked. I did it. But it was a jumping off point to say, okay, well, this is something that I enjoy doing, and let's see where that goes. So
yeah, I had to go through that. The first video, I was like, everything's on iPhone. I feel like I need to reshoot it all. No, impossible, because the work's already done. Like, I'm not going to recut and create another closet or take down the closet and do it again.
Redo.
So I was like, I'm just going to have to settle down with it. And then I'll set up a deadline date. This is the date it's going to be released, regardless of the quality. So I got to the point where I got to that date, and I tried to smash in as much quality post-production into it. And I was like, I guess this is going to go onto the wild. So I just put it out there.
Yeah. I mean, you are going to be your own worst critic. And, and while we were talking about negative reactions and comments from other people, definitely you want to try your best to just, zone that out and ignore it. But the better that you get at any craft, that just takes practice, and it takes repetition. And you definitely don't want to be discouraged just because, I can't get my videos to have this bokeh effect. Like, you have an iPhone, like an iPhone 10 or an iPhone 11. You're not going to get a bokeh effect. Sorry, not sorry. It's okay though. That's okay. Like, no one,
Exactly. That was 2 seconds of your video. You're good.
Yeah, it is fine. I don't know. It happens. And I put myself in that realm from time to time. If I'm watching a creator like MKBHD or even like Casey Neistat, and they do like this really cool like video transition, and I run to my computer and I try to do the same video transition. I'm like, I'm gonna use that video transition every single time. I'm like, well, I don't think it was the video transition itself that I got excited about. It was the fact that I learned how to do that video transition. And now I'm going to take that skill and make it into my own. And I don't know. I think that kind of mentality I wouldn't have had without going through like all the highs and lows with you and with Victor of just trying out different things and failing completely. And I think one of our biggest failures was April 1st of 2010. April 1st, 2010. I put out a bunch of like fake news articles saying that Verizon was buying Sprint, that BlackBerry was being bought by Apple, like all these things, and just kind of throwing them out there. And they actually pulled down our Alexa ranking. You're welcome. And it was just like, okay, this was so bad. But there was one comment that somebody said, this article was extremely badly written, but I do like the fact that you did some research. I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna pull that. I'm gonna improve my writing skills, but at least my researching skills are getting better. So like, all right, I'm moving somewhere.
That's crazy. I remember that. That's so funny, man. Yeah, we all went through some stuff with the company, man. It cracks me up, the stuff that we went through. But I mean, again, you're right. You know, it's a lot of it is just getting past that hurdle of, just put it out there.
Yeah.
And the starting piece is always it's getting your mind prepared for that. But if you're going through that much already, maybe you don't need to, right?
Right.
But if you're willing to do it, I think in the end, ultimately, you're just gonna end up finding yourself doing it. I think that's the key, right? You're just like, oh, because there's guys that are gonna be like, okay, I'm just gonna put this together. It's not gonna be great, but it's gonna be out there, right? And that's kind of what happens. For me, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm trying to put it out there. I go, I'm not satisfied with that. I'm not satisfied with that. No, close enough. Okay, that's close enough. Forget it. I'm spending way too much time. This is good enough, and then it just goes out. And that's kind of where I sit. But as long as you don't get your ambitions don't get out to the wild, I think it's game. So
what is next for you? What, like with the woodworking project, what is the next like project that you think is on the horizon for you?
Right now the project is the family. So my son is becoming a very serious baseball player.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And I'm becoming like, I'm his coach right now, so that's why I haven't been releasing any videos. And so I've been spending a lot of my time with the kids and then improving them in their baseball. And at some point, I'm trying to borrow whatever I'm getting out of that into, my next project. And probably that will be right back into the Kicking Dust project. So as my son is going into high school now, which is crazy to say.
What?
Right? Yes.
No.
Owen's going to high school. Yes.
No.
Yes.
No, he's not. Crazy. He's not going to high school. He's this big. He's my height
he's a
now. Little. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, dude.
Oh my
gosh. He's taller than me, man. That's crazy,
That's
dude.
insane.
It's nuts, man.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's hitting bombs. And I guess the thing I'm trying to get out of it now and how I could borrow into this, and maybe I might just go into my learn more editing, is tonight I'm going to create a supercut for him so that tomorrow he's going to meet with his JV coach and then try to sell himself to see if he could get on the team.
Oh, wow.
Very
cool.
That's going to be the next step.
Nice.
And then whatever I learn out of tonight's techniques, I'm going to put that into my channels. I'm still going to do programming. There's another idea that's in my head that's been, it's been an itch I couldn't scratch, but I don't know if I'm willing to scratch it because it might open up a can of worms. So, but, when it comes to these kind of programming like projects, they could really suck your time in. So
sure.
I have to really decide, do I want to do this thing?
Yeah.
But immediately it would just be back into the maker space. So just after all of this stuff, obviously family being in the middle of it all, just try to have some fun. So in the end, I'm just trying to have fun in every journey that I'm taking, whether it's hanging out with family and doing the baseball thing, coaching and programming and this maker stuff, this maker channel. I'm trying to enjoy the minutes that I have with it. So
100%.
Yeah, but so far so good, dude. So
That's
but
great,
damn, man, it's crazy. I can't. You've come a long way, dude. It's nuts.
I've had a lot of support. I've had a lot of help. People like Huckled Gaming. He and I really connected during the pandemic and trying to figure out this whole streaming thing and finding a community that would not only support morally but also like technically and be able to give me ideas as to like how to find an audience, reach and sustain an audience, and then also just letting me be weird and different for a long time and just seeing if any of it makes sense for me as an individual, as someone who wants to put that kind of persona out into the internet. Because as you know, you and I grew up in the internet stage of everything lives on the internet forever. So if you're going to do something, make sure that you're okay with whatever it is that you're doing. Right. And so I still have that kind of moral obligation to myself to make sure that the things that I try, albeit they might be a little bit wacky, but I could still look back at it with my kids or my grandkids and be like, yep, that was me and I'm proud of it. So I owe a lot to my community and the people around me that continue to push me up. My fiance Aurelia continues to be in my corner and gives me very good constructive criticism, as well as just pushing me with Microsoft and the streams. Like she and I were streaming on Saturday. We made ramen pretty much from scratch, and I could say almost without a shadow of a doubt, any of my past relationships, there wouldn't be any of my domestic partners or you know my ex-wife would not want to be a part of that. It just wasn't their bag, and to have that kind of like in-person support from her it helps every little bit along the way. But with that being said, part of that communication, especially with her, is, you know, I'm going to stream on this day and this day, but it's only going to go for a certain amount of time. And with that being said, my time is coming up because I do have to cook dinner for the rest of the family tonight, and you have a video to cut. So before we jump out, is there any other links, any other socials or websites? I put in the chat your YouTube URL, Raz Kicking Dust on YouTube. Is there any place else that you'd like people to check out?
Nothing just yet. I am going to probably have the kickingdust.com website coming soon, so just look out for that in the coming months. It should be good.
Awesome. Well, folks, thank you so much for being here. Rad, thank you so much for being here. You guys can actually talk to Rad. He is in our Discord, so I put the link in our Discord. So if you have any questions about woodworking or just business, online business, or coding in general, you know, maybe reach out to him there. Otherwise, we are going to do the right thing and we are going to go ahead and raid out. Rad, once again, thank you so much for being here. It does, however, look like one of our very own streamers in the One Guild community is streaming right now. I'm actually quite excited. Looks like Nano Ninja is streaming. So we're going to make sure that he is actually streaming before we just go scare him. Yep. It says that he's playing Super Animal Royale, but it definitely looks like Call of Duty. So we're going to go check out Call of Duty. Ramen, Melody, thank you so much. We'll see you folks in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Love each other. And we'll see you next Thursday. Bye-bye.
All right, Tony.
All right, and we rated out.